Welcome to the Veeam Hands-On Lab series. In this lab, we're going to be covering hardened repository. Now, let's first start with the fundamentals of why you're going to be doing this lab. The idea behind this is Veeam utilizing the natural immutability of Linux to create and configure repositories that can protect data with immutability. Now, why is that important? Because a lot of people want to have either on-prem or controlled inside their site immutable sources. Well, before we get into the lab itself, first, we want to make sure that as we're doing the lab, we're trying to understand why we're doing each step instead of just following step 1 to 7 and hoping that we got each step right. Slow down sometimes and try to think about what you've just done per task, and hopefully that will create a lot more clarity when you're doing your labs. Now, to help out as well, let's go through some of the components you'll see in the lab. Notice each one has a unique IP address. As you configure certain components, that'll be a very important component to pay close attention to because it'll help you identify what you're adding from one server to another. So let's start with production ESX1 called prod ESX1. And beneath this, there are 6 virtual machines. One of those is going to be your vCenter storage appliance, and then 3 Linux virtual machines, and then we have a domain controller, and then a proxy 1. In the middle, we have this, if you will, standalone Veeam backup and replication server that will be on Windows. And then over here, you will see the DR ESX1 for the disaster recovery site. Beneath this, you will see a NAS1 for our storage for NAS, and a proxy 2. Why we have a proxy 1 and proxy 2 will become much more clear as we do the lab itself. Now, to help out a little bit more, I'd like to cover some of the components that are pre-existing on some of these virtual machines. So starting on Linux 1, we have WordPress HTML pre-installed. On Linux 3, the hardened repo is already installed as well, so it's a pre-existing hardened repository. Over on the DR side, we have installed on proxy 2 SQL Express and pre-installed a Veeam proxy. And lastly, DC1 and proxy 2 both have been pre-backed up before you even started the labs. So with this information, now we have a better understanding of how the environment is laid out. Let's go and start doing these tasks, and hopefully this will help you start to bind some of those concepts instead of just going through the motions. Enjoy the lab.